Okay, first, you online students, can you hear me? I'm not having good work trying to control the volume. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. Okay, thanks, Corey. Appreciate it. Thank you, Jack. All right. Super. All right, so I'm going to record this class, especially because this particular one has quite a few things at the last part here that are pretty important. So I want to give you the opportunity of keeping this. So we had talked about vertical integration. We had talked about the degrees of vertical integration as well. We talked about the cost and benefits in the make or buy situation. The costs, we also pretty much confirmed that if you're going to be in the situation, you always start from the buy, and then what you're doing is you're justifying the make. Now, having said that, how do you go about paying for the buy? So there's actually three common ways of doing it, the ones that are most often used. And so the first one is the margin, okay? And the margin is the difference between the price of the good and cost of goods sold. Just quite simply that, just the markup. And that is one of the ways that we normally go about making a payment, all right? The next is a commission, which would be a fraction of the retail price. And so that would be some fraction like 12% of the total cost. And this is usually when you're in fairly good terms with your dealers. And then the last one is a royalty, which is a percentage of the retailer's business. This one is more predominant, especially with franchises. And so when you do a franchise, two of the ways that you pay for it is that you have an initial franchise fee, and then what you have is a royalty. So like every month, the company that runs McDonald's, every month, I don't know if it's this exact number or not, but before they ever pay any bills, 9% of their total profits, and I'm not saying net profits, excuse me, I should say revenue, 9% of their revenue goes to McDonald's corporate. And that would be an example. And so those are the three most common. The others are creative ways that you can go about paying, especially if you don't have any of the others or the corporation is relatively new or just starting. The first is a lump sum or a flat fee. And so whatever those needs are, or whatever you need, you buy in either on a service contract, and so the fee is the same all the time, or all of the goods are dumped in one location and you pay one lump sum. If I'm a corporation and I'm looking at a downstream one that looks like they're very promising, but they have some difficulties, then I might do what's called a functional discount. And a functional discount is where you're reimbursed for your expenses. And that's it. Difficulty with functional discounts is that when you start marking everything up for expenses, it can get kind of expensive. So I mean, like you could just do things that wouldn't necessarily just be the cost of it, and you would add that functional discount onto it. In other words, the functional discount means I'm only paying for functions. However, you can have bill padding, and that can be a difficulty. And the last is future considerations, future business. And the difficulty with future business, of course, is that future business may never materialize. However, what you feel is that there is some amount of reciprocity, that there's a willingness for both sides to get together and hopefully find some way of achieving success. Rarely does future consideration work. Sometimes it makes out like abandon. I was just looking at, I was reading about the story of the history of The Godfather, the movie and the book. And the interesting thing about the, I think it was a Paramount, Paramount had no faith whatsoever in the movie The Godfather. And the only reason that they did it was because they owed Coppola something. And Coppola always makes The Godfather when he's running out of money. And so that future consideration is the whole reason that it came up in the first place. And we have one of the greatest mob movies of all time. All right, so these are the ways that we buy in. The most common are margins, commissions, and royalties. But the other ones, the other variations, are for those corporations that you accept that you're doing this as a hazard and you're willing to be able to invest in them for a future. Now, why would you go from a buy situation to a make situation given all of the complications? This is a test question, like everything is, but this one is an important one. Why do we do anything in business? Why do we make changes at all? And there's only one reason we do these things. We make changes in business. We're in business in the first place. Is that we increase this ROI. Anybody want to guess what it means?
Return on investment.
Return on investment. Absolutely. Outstanding. The only reason we make choices is that we're going to increase this particular formula. Return on investment is the primary criteria. And so, how do we calculate this return on investment? Well, this formula that we use and breaks it down. And so, what are the things that we need to define? Well, the first thing we need to define is revenues. And revenues are the generated gross income, I should say, income before, before direct costs or any of the other costs are associated with it. So the first thing you do is you take total revenue and you subtract the direct cost. Those are all of the costs directly associated with the production of a single unit, or excuse me, for the total units to create this revenue, pardon me. Usually you talk about direct cost and cost per unit, but what we're talking about here is if I made $1 million and it cost me $500,000 to directly make those goods, that's what the direct cost would be. That gives you what's known as net effectiveness. And net effectiveness is the money that was generated minus what it cost. And the last is the overhead. Overhead are all other indirect costs. If you were in accounting, you would look at this as general and administrative expenses. These are the things like the light bill that is not directly associated with production. These are the legal fees. This is the monthly amortization on just office equipment. This is everything that has to do, or everything that does not have anything to do with direct production of the unit. And then that is ultimately what's known as efficiency. And so if I'm going to think about make versus buy, one of the things I'm wanting to tie down is what are our direct costs and what are our revenues? And then does it make our overhead go any higher? All of this works in. The number that you want to have on this, because it's a percentage, the number that you want to have is over 1. Okay? Over 1. Because if what I'm doing sinks this number, and that if I cannot even pay my overhead, then I haven't succeeded in what I want to do. So you use this to determine whether vertical integration is economically feasible. Now, there are other reasons, regardless of return of investment, of why you may not invest. And one is you can't obtain the resources to do it. This could be knowledge. It could be anything, any particular value that you just simply can't obtain. Or you have other priorities which contribute more to the return on investment, and realizing that in a fixed world with limited resources, we don't have enough. Many times this traps small organizations where they have to sell off some of their assets or even license what they do in order to survive. And that's the game, all right? So return on investment is the ratio of net effectiveness to overhead, okay? That's the reason why, okay? The one reason why we vertically integrate, the one reason why we get up in the bed in the morning, the one reason why we do anything in business is to increase our return on investment. That's it. Now, we've got to have darn good reasons to get over to that side for vertical integration, because we've got outstanding reasons to outsource. So many advantages come to outsourcing that vertical integration really has to make good play. These are the reasons that channel partners can do their jobs better than you can. The first is they live with a motivation. They have incentives for good performance, both reward power and coercion power. The positive is that they get to make profits. The negative is, or the fear, is that they have to be able to succeed. The incentives are all in the good for good performance. The next is that these particular individuals in their specialties, it's all they do and it does nothing else. Once again, this is the same philosophy that the buy decision is anyway. The buy decision is I'm not wasting any of my resources on doing this. You do this all the time. You do it better. The survival of the economic fittest. It is a crowded market out there with enormous competition. The drive to succeed and do their job better than the competition is directly coordinated or associated with their effort. Not only that, but because they do those things better and because they collect all of those unique same jobs that are like each other, they can pool demands for better for several manufacturers, provide channel functions across multiple outlets. This is the thing that a warehouse does that quite simply multiple multi-retailers can't. The economies of scale lives. If I'm a wholesaler and I focus on mom and pop stores, I can cover that area much better, especially geographically, than the manufacturers can, because quite simply, they're too far away. They don't know what it's like to live in the retail environment. And the last is independence too, okay? When it comes to your collections of different ones, you have a diversified group of outside providers. These are all reasons why you outsource your channel functions. And once again, this comes down to return on investment. You've got to go a long way to beat the advantages that they have here, but they do. And so, what are the unique capabilities that you have that might drive you to a vertical market? Because it is not the sameness that makes us make the decision, it is the uniqueness. And so it comes down to two groups, one that are called intangibles and the others that are called tangibles. And so the first one is idiosyncratic knowledge. You have a unique skill set that cannot be readily deployed to any other principle. You ever watch anybody tune a guitar by ear? That is just an amazing skill to me. I had someone come and tune the piano and did it all by ear. I mean, it's just an amazing skill. That's an idiosyncratic knowledge. It might generate into other fields as well because of the fineness of the brain to do that. But it's a unique skill set and it's not easily deployed somewhere else. That idiosyncratic knowledge may be so unique and even more specialized that that individual creates a value that draws others to it. My dad's former wife was an EEG specialist, and she did that for 30 years or 40 years as a brainwave specialist. She could look at a cardiogram and say, there's something wrong here, something bad, even though you can't see it. That's an example of an idiosyncratic knowledge. So unique, so specialized that it functions and rules within its group, but may not be usable elsewhere. The other is, how well are your relationships? If our connections between the personnel is really good, we can get things done quickly and effectively, then basically maybe we don't need to go further. Maybe the advantages are there enough. And then finally, the brand equity. You may have such compelling power as a brand that you can dominate all the way down to the channel itself. Oh gosh, what am I thinking of? The small supermarket store in Italy. Aldi, that's it. Aldi is a classic example. Aldi has a brand equity that allows it to control its particular channels from beginning to end. And this town is clamoring for an Aldi. Not sure, but by all means, bring one, okay? But that's an example of a strong brand name that can dominate so much. And you can design products for your customers and make them so valuable that the consumers won't want to go anywhere else. If you have an equity so strong with your downstream customers that is independent from where they shop, yes. And so next, let's talk about tangible capabilities. Now, Amazon and Federal Express are going their own ways now because Amazon demanded 2/3 of their Cincinnati facilities, and Federal Express said quite simply, there's no way that we're even going to be able to survive like this. And they didn't. Interesting thing enough is that between, Federal Express has over 7,000 third-party distributors that they use to do last mile deliveries. But if you have unique capabilities and unique physical capacity, then these are strategic, tangible assets. You can have unique, customized physical facilities. You can have giant reefers that provide cold storage that can't be replaced. The next is that you could have a dedicated capacity. You have warehousing and everything set up to serve a particular manufacturer. Procter & Gamble and Walmart are so closely associated together that there is a Walmart office in Procter & Gamble in Dayton, Ohio, and there is a Procter & Gamble office in Bentonville, Arkansas. That is how close they are together. And then finally, this is the one that always makes me tongue twisted. Site specificity. I got that out. You may need to have particular functions at a particular location that best suits the needs of the manufacturer. And in a geographically challenged area like Western Carolina, this becomes more important than ever. If I were a brewer right now, one of the things that I would sure like would be dedicated water capacity in one way or another. And that would be one of the reasons why you see quite a few brewers up here. But these are the tangible capabilities, and these are the things that help us make decisions whether or not to go vertical or not. And then finally, let's talk about uncertainty in the business environment. How certain are we of the future that we're going to be able to generate reasonable revenues over a long period of time? So let me think. Let's think of a generic supermarket, and then let's think of a Whole Foods. All right. Let's think of those in one way or another. A generalized supermarket has what I would call low specificity. In other words, there is not a number of things demonstratively different about the way they do things than other supermarkets in their market. They do kind of generate localized, kind of advantages, but they're the same. Now think of Whole Foods. Whole Foods is also what I would call a category killer. They focus down a general line. You could think of them almost separate in other ways, and yet they are a supermarket. Okay, but their specialization is towards a different genre than the larger ones. However, even supermarkets have those sections as well. So in a highly volatile market, I'm dropping in and I'm trying to be able to make a difference. If I have low specificity where the market is volatile, I want to maintain my assets loose. In other words, I need to be able to shift working capital around to be able to meet demands until I know that the market or the volatility is reduced. Uncertainty is the worst thing. And so I need to maintain or understand what is fixed, what is in front of me, and know what I can take care of. Remember, here's the big thing about vertical markets many times is you underestimate the cost of what you have to do down there because you've never done that as a job or either one. And so in a highly volatile market with low specificity, I'm going to make it out, you outsource your distribution. You want to retain your flexibility. You want to keep your working capital going. However, if you have high specificity, if your particular product is unique, and it's a highly promising market that you can grab, and not only that, but you want to not only motivate and generate control over the product, but the employees and all of those other things, then you want to vertically integrate down. You want to be able to sell your goods in that unique environment. You'll want to avoid the small numbers bargaining. You want to go in. And of course, in a less promising market where you have high specificity, the answer is not there. It really means that you need even in a highly volatile market with high specificity, if the market is promising, jump in and vertically integrate. So what are the other reasons why you vertically integrate? So how do I know whether or not I'm being successful or not? There's a difficulty known as performance ambiguity, which basically states that as a manufacturer, I have a limited understanding of the performance of my good all the way down. Quite simply, that's not my job. And so performance ambiguity means that there's a disconnection between my success or failure and the duties that I have that are achieving that failure or success. That's what a performance ambiguity is. The appropriate measures that you have can be uncertain, especially if you're not closely connected to the market and knowing what the market is doing. And so I want to reduce performance ambiguity, but I also want to learn something from my customers. And so such things as dual distribution, where I have a channel outlet where I have traditional channels as well. I have franchise stores, or I vertically integrate. All of those are reasons to give you a greater understanding of the market itself. It is a way for the manufacturer to learn. So there's a blurb there of Luxottica purchased LensCrafter to gain. Not Luxottica is European, I think it's French. I was talking to somebody that was an unmitigated disaster actually, because and this happens unfortunately is when you buy other companies, the corporate culture sometimes doesn't mix well together. And they thought that was going to be, it would be their way into the United States, because Luxottica traditionally sold their goods through doctors and those kind of things, whereas LensCrafter generally is a retail marketed thing where the doctors come to the stores themselves. Didn't work out. Still trying to figure out their mess, but that is the way of the world. And so this is one of those examples. So Intermarché is a French grocery retailer. They decided that they were going to integrate food production, and what they found is that quite simply they didn't understand the business. And this is a big problem that happens when you vertically integrate sometimes. It consumed too much of their attention. They lost focus on their original reasons for being in business. It happens a lot. There was a corporation in the 80s called Borland International. Philippe Kahn had it, and they created programming languages for personal computers. And they decided they wanted to go out and grab a big section of the market. So they bought, they bought WordPerfect, and they bought a bunch of other ones. They came together and created Borland Office. They were going to take on Microsoft, and it just simply cratered because they didn't have the assets to be able to keep up with Microsoft. That's an example. That saying of staying in your lane sometimes is the best thing that you can do. And unfortunately, they didn't do it. By the way, Philippe Kahn went on to create the first web camera. So he lost $1 billion and gained $1 billion. So some guys got it. Excuse me. Where's my mouse? There you are. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Come back again. And so we are at the end, okay? Just a few other words before we go on. The vertical integration decision begins with the base that outsourcing is the most attractive. The returns on investment for vertical integration must be greater and it must be substantial. If not, outsource. If your need for control from beginning to end, not only the control of the goods through the channel system, but even the individuals who are pitching your particular good are that important. If there's specialized knowledge and skills that come along with that business that you don't want to change, or once again, the return on investment is higher, you go vertical. But finally, remember this, being committed to a system doesn't mean you're committed to a member of the system, all right? And so if vertical is the way you need to go, then by all means do it. Many corporations have succeeded, as I've said. IBM succeeded by going to a monthly fee. Emerson did the same thing with their refrigerated reefers. They did it. It basically flattened out the monthly income levels, provided them as a hedge against volatility in the market. Okay. All right, we're done. Hope you're okay. Stay out of the rain and have a good weekend. I will post this in a second. Bye, everybody.